The thing nobody tells you about living on an interstellar research station is that the walls are thin, really thin. Like you can hear your neighbor gargling 3 rooms over thin. But Danny Brightwell had learned to tune it out, mostly during her 18 months aboard the Celestial Hawthorne. Wait, no, that wasn't right. The Luminous Pathfinder. Yes, that sounded official enough, though everyone just called it the bucket because it looked like someone had welded a dozen cargo containers together and called it architecture, which, to be fair, was exactly what had happened. Danny rolled out her mat, a thin, purple rectangle she'd brought from Earth and treasured like gold, and positioned it in the narrow strip of floor space between her bunk and her desk. Through the viewport beside her, the planet Virillion Prime spun lazily below, all swirling violet clouds and the occasional glimpse of dark continents. Morning on the station. Well, morning in the loosest sense. When you orbit a planet every 90 minutes, you have to arbitrarily decide when day begins, and the station commander had picked 0600 hours because she was, in Danny's professional opinion, a sadist. But Danny had made peace with the early wake-ups. She'd been practicing yoga for 6 years now, since college, since that semester when everything went sideways and her roommate dragged her to a class in the student rec center. It had stuck. Even here, hundreds of light years from home, she needed this. The routine, the breathing, the brief illusion that she had control over something in this chaotic metal can hurtling through space. She started with child's pose, forehead pressed to the mat, arms stretched forward. Deep breath in, deep breath out. The recycled air tasted faintly metallic, but she'd stopped noticing months ago. Hold for 5 counts. Feel the stretch in the shoulders. Good. Her lower back had been killing her lately. Too many hours hunched over specimen slides, cataloging the bizarre cellular structures of Virillion's native lichens. Exciting stuff, really. Her dissertation committee back on Earth would be thrilled. Transitioning into downward dog, Danny felt her hamstrings protest. She'd skipped yesterday's session because of that emergency staff meeting about the sewage recycler. Nothing says glamorous space exploration like 3 hours discussing fecal matter processing, and her body was punishing her for it. From downward dog, she flowed into plank, holding steady, core engaged, breathing controlled. Then upward dog, chest open, gaze lifted toward the ceiling panels with their flickering yellow lights that maintenance kept promising to fix. Then back to downward dog. Again. The sun salutation sequence, muscle memory taking over, the familiar burn starting in her thighs and shoulders. She didn't notice her door sliding open. Just a crack. Maybe 3 inches. She definitely didn't notice the 3 pairs of large, reflective eyes watching her from the corridor. Vrix had been on his way to the engineering bay for the morning shift change when he saw it. Movement through the partially open door. His ears swiveled forward automatically, tracking the sound of breathing. Labored, strained breathing. His people, the Ketra, had evolved as pursuit predators on a world where listening meant survival. You learned to catalog sounds the way humans learned colors. And that breathing? That was the breathing of something in distress. He froze mid-step, his tail going rigid. The human, the xenobiologist, Danny something. She was on the floor, limbs splayed at unnatural angles, body contorting in ways that looked distinctly wrong. As Vrix watched, she pushed herself up into a position that bent her spine backward, head tilted toward the ceiling, mouth open. A distress display. Had to be. "Hurl!" Vrix hissed, his claws extending reflexively. "Pippa, come here, now!" His 2 companions, Both junior engineers, like himself, scrambled over. Hurl was the bigger of the two females, her spotted fur bristling as she followed his gaze. Pippa, smaller and quicker, let out a low growl of confusion. "What is she doing?" Pippa whispered. "I don't know," Vrix admitted, watching as Danny folded herself forward, hands flat on the ground, rear end in the air, head hanging down. "But it's not natural." "Maybe it's a human thing," Hurl suggested, though her ears were flat against her skull, a sign of uncertainty, maybe fear. "Look at her breathing," Vrix countered. The human's ribcage was expanding and contracting in deep, deliberate movements. "She's exhausted. And those positions? It's like something is forcing her down, twisting her limbs." The three Ketra exchanged glances. They were young, barely into their second solar cycle of adult service. But they weren't idiots. They'd heard the stories. Every species had them. On the Ketra homeworld of Rickon 4, the old hunters spoke of void stalkers, predators that existed partially outside normal space, invisible until the moment they struck. They'd grasp prey with tendrils of solidified darkness, bending bodies until bones snapped. "Should we get security?" Pippa asked, her voice higher than usual. Vrix's whiskers twitched. Security was 3 decks away. The human was right there, clearly struggling. How long did they have? He watched as Danny lowered herself flat, then pushed back up into that rear-elevated position again. The movement seemed almost practiced. But the strain was obvious. Her skin glistened with moisture. Sweat, the humans called it, their bizarre cooling mechanism that made them smell like minerals and salt. "We don't have time," Vrix decided. His hunting instinct was screaming at him. Pack defends pack. Even if the human wasn't technically pack, she was crew. Same thing, really. "She's fighting something. We help her fight." "Are you insane?" Hurl grabbed his shoulder, claws pricking through the fabric of his engineering jumpsuit. "We don't even know what." But Vrix was already moving. He'd always been impulsive. His creche mother had said it would get him killed someday. Possibly today. He slammed his palm against the door panel, and the door whooshed fully open. Danny had just transitioned into warrior pose, right leg lunged forward, arms stretched overhead, when 3 Ketra exploded into her quarters like furry missiles. "Hang on, Danny!" Vrix shouted in heavily accented standard, the human trade language. "We save you!" Danny's head whipped around, eyes wide, and that moment of distraction cost her. Vrix crashed into her from the side, wrapping his arms around what he thought was her torso, actually her extended left arm, and yanked hard. Hurl dove past them, claws out, swiping at the empty air near Danny's head. Pippa, bringing up the rear, grabbed Danny's ankle and pulled. Danny went down like a demolished building. "Ow! What the— Stop!" She hit the floor mat with a thud that knocked the wind from her lungs. Vrix was on top of her, his weight pressing her flat, his claws kneading into her shoulders. Not painfully, he had his claws retracted, but firmly, the way a mother cat pins a kitten. "Get off! What are you doing?" "Don't move," Vrix commanded, scanning the room for threats. "Where is it? Where is the void stalker?" "The what?" Danny tried to sit up. Pippa immediately pushed her back down. "Stay down!" Pippa insisted. "You are injured. You must not provoke it further." Hurl had backed herself into the corner by the viewport, fur standing on end, making a sound like a dozen kettles boiling. It was the Ketra threat display, designed to terrify prey and warn other predators. To Danny, it sounded like someone was strangling a synthesizer. "There's nothing here." Danny managed to twist onto her side, dislodging Vrix enough to get her arm free. "Let me up," I was just— The door opened again. This time, it was Dr. Lilith Park, the station's chief medical officer, still in her sleep clothes, baggy pants and an oversized shirt with a faded logo. Her dark hair stuck up in about 6 different directions. Behind her, the sinuous form of Ushvik, the serpentine science officer, slithered into view, his scales catching the corridor lights. "What in the—" Lilith stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene. Danny on the floor, pinned under a very concerned Ketra. Another Ketra, making demonic noises in the corner. A third Ketra crouched protectively over Danny's legs. Ushavik's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Then his whole body started to shake. It took Danny a moment to realize he was laughing. "So," Ushavik hissed, his voice a sibilant rasp that somehow conveyed perfect amusement. "The Cubs have staged a rescue? How valiant." "A rescue?" Danny shoved at Vrix again. He reluctantly climbed off, though he stayed close, his eyes still scanning for invisible threats. "I was doing yoga." "Yo-ga." Vrix repeated the unfamiliar word slowly. "Exercise, stretching, morning routine." Danny scrambled to her feet, breathing hard, now actually winded from the tackle, not the poses. "What did you think was happening?" The 3 Ketra looked at each other, then at Danny, then at Dr. Lilith, as if hoping the other human would explain this madness. "You were—" Vrix's ears flattened. "You were bending, making pain sounds. Your breathing was stressed. We thought something was attacking you. Something we couldn't see." Silence fell over the cramped quarters. Even Hurl had stopped her threat display, though her fur was still puffed out to twice her normal size, making her look like an overgrown dandelion with fangs. Dr. Lilith pressed her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders started shaking. "Don't," Danny warned. "Don't you dare." Lilith lost it. She doubled over, laughing so hard no sound came out, just wheezing gasps. Ushavik joined her, his laughter a series of hissing clicks that sounded vaguely like popcorn popping. Danny closed her eyes and counted to 10. Then 20. Then she gave up and started laughing too, because what else could she do? She'd been tackled by alien cubs who thought she was fighting invisible monsters. This was her life now. This was what 18 months in space had brought her to. "Okay," she said finally, wiping her eyes. "Okay. We need to talk about human exercise. Everybody sit down." Vrix sat cross-legged on the floor, his tail curled around his feet, looking like a student who'd just been called to the principal's office. Hurl had finally stopped puffing her fur, but she kept glancing at the corners of the room, as if void stalkers might materialize at any moment. Pippa had claimed the desk chair, spinning it slowly back and forth, her claws tapping an anxious rhythm on the armrests. Dr. Lilith had composed herself enough to lean against the doorframe, though occasional giggles still escaped. Ushvik had coiled his lower body into a neat spiral, his upper torso swaying slightly, his 4 eyes fixed on Danny with undisguised amusement. "So," Danny began, standing in front of her tiny audience like a professor at the world's strangest lecture, "yoga. It's a practice that originated on Earth about 5,000 years ago. Maybe longer. The historical record gets fuzzy." "A practice," Vrix repeated carefully. "Like weapons training?" "No, well, sort of. It's exercise, but not combat exercise. It's about flexibility, strength, balance, and—" She paused, searching for words that would translate mental clarity, calmness. The 3 Ketra stared at her with expressions that suggested she'd just claimed water was dry. "You make yourself uncomfortable," Ushavik supplied helpfully. "For mental calmness? Fascinating." Contradictory. Very human. It's not uncomfortable once you get used to it, Danny protested. It feels good. The stretching releases tension. The breathing lowers your heart rate. The whole practice is supposed to unite body and mind. Hurl raised a paw hesitantly, like a student with a question. But why were you breathing so hard? We heard you. That's distress breathing. Controlled breathing, Danny corrected. Deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It's called pranayama, breath work. It oxygenates your blood, helps you focus. On my world, Hurl said slowly, when something breathes like that, it's either been running for many hours or it's dying. Well, on my world, it means you're healthy and taking care of yourself. Danny grabbed her water bottle from the desk, taking a long drink. Look, I get it. From the outside, it probably looked weird. But humans need regular movement, or our bodies deteriorate. Our muscles atrophy, our joints stiffen. We evolved as endurance hunters. We're built to move constantly. Endurance hunters, Vrix murmured, his ears perking up. Like pursuit predators? Exactly like that. Our ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We're not fast, but we don't quit. That's kind of our thing. The Ketra exchanged glances. Vrix's tail started swishing, a sign of excitement Danny had learned. So yoga is training? To maintain hunting capability? Sure, let's go with that. Danny decided not to mention that she'd never hunted anything more dangerous than a good parking spot. Lots of humans do it, not just for physical fitness, but for stress relief. Living in space is stressful. The confined quarters, the recycled everything, being away from home. Yoga helps me stay balanced. I do see something similar, Ushevik offered, uncoiling slightly. In water. My people perform flowing movements in our breeding pools, stretching our length, twisting through currents. It soothes the mind, prepares the body for egg-laying season. Okay, I didn't need that last detail, Lilith muttered. But yes, lots of species have exercise routines. Humans just tend to do theirs in ways that look alarming to observers. Pippa leaned forward in the chair. Can you show us? Slowly, so we understand? I want to see how you bend like that without breaking. Danny glanced at Lilith, who shrugged. Sure, why not? Class is in session, I guess. She returned to her mat, kneeling at the front edge. Okay, this is called child's pose. It's a resting position. She folded forward, forehead to the mat, arms extended. See? I'm completely in control. Nothing is forcing me down. I'm choosing to be here because it stretches my lower back and shoulders. From floor level, she heard Vrix whisper to Hurl, "This is a resting position?" She's folded in half. Humans are bendy, Hurl whispered back. Danny pushed herself up. Now, this is cat-cow stretch. Watch. She moved through the undulating motion, arching her spine, then rounding it. This mobilizes the vertebrae. See my breathing? Steady, controlled, no distress. Your spine does that on purpose? Pippa sounded horrified and impressed in equal measure. Mammalian anatomy, Lilith supplied. We've got flexible spinal columns. Yours are different, more rigid, built for pouncing power. Danny transitioned into downward dog, the pose that had started this whole mess. This one is called downward-facing dog. It strengthens the arms and shoulders, stretches the hamstrings and calves, and you name your positions after animals, Vrix interrupted. We do that too. Our combat stances are named after Rican predators. Slashing mantis, coiled serpent, pouncing razorback. This is way less violent than that. Danny said, her voice slightly strained from holding the pose. Most yoga poses are named after animals, plants, or shapes. There's cobra, tree, mountain, warrior. Warrior? All three Ketra perked up simultaneously. Okay, yes, warrior pose. Danny flowed into it, right leg forward, arms overhead. But it's not about fighting. It's about strength and stability. You're rooted to the ground, reaching toward the sky, strong but peaceful. The silence that followed suggested the Ketra were trying very hard to understand a concept that didn't quite fit their worldview. I'm confused, Hurl admitted. You practice being strong but not for fighting? We practice being strong for living, Danny said, switching legs. For carrying groceries, for climbing stairs, for playing with kids, for not throwing out your back when you bend over to pick up a pen. Everyday strength. Not everything is about combat. Shh, speak for yourself, Ushvik hissed pleasantly. My people have 36 words for different types of combat, and 3 words for peace. Your people also eat their siblings in the egg chamber, so maybe not the best example, Lilith pointed out. Only the weak one-s. Can we not? Danny straightened up, hands on hips. You're all missing the point. This isn't about fighting or hunting or establishing dominance. It's about taking care of yourself, self-maintenance, mental health. The door chimed. Danny sighed. Come in. The door slid open to reveal Hulbris, the station's head of security. He was a Durnan, a species that looked like someone had carved a very grumpy person out of volcanic rock and then given it just enough mobility to be threatening. He stood roughly 8 feet tall, his body composed of interlocking stone-like plates that ground together when he moved. He also moved at approximately the speed of continental drift. Noise complaint, Hulbris rumbled, his voice like an avalanche in slow motion. From Deck 6, reported sounds of combat, threat displays. Found 3 Ketra engineers on this deck when they should be in engineering bay. His glowing eyes, the only soft thing about him, fixed on Vrix, Hurl, and Pippa. Explanation? The cubs looked at Danny. Danny looked at Lilith. Lilith was trying not to laugh again. They thought I was under attack, Danny said flatly. They were trying to rescue me from my yoga practice. Hulbris's head rotated toward her with the sound of grinding gravel. Several seconds passed. Yoga? Human exercise, Lilith supplied, involves stretching and deliberate breathing. More seconds passed. Hulbris's species didn't need to exercise. Their bodies were essentially living stone, requiring minimal maintenance and no cardiovascular activity. The concept of voluntary physical stress was probably as alien to him as photosynthesis. Humans, he said finally, and somehow packed an entire dissertation on the inexplicable nature of humanity into that single word. Carry on. Cubs, report to engineering. You're late. The 3 Ketra scrambled to their feet, relief evident in their postures. But Vrix paused at the door, turning back. Danny, I'm sorry we tackled you. We thought you were in danger. My people, we protect the pack, even when we get it wrong. Something in Danny's chest went soft. These weren't just clumsy aliens who'd misunderstood a situation. They were kids, really. Young and inexperienced, far from home, doing their best in an environment that confused them. And when they'd thought she was in trouble, they hadn't hesitated. They'd rushed in to help. I know, she said gently. Thank you for caring enough to try. Next time, maybe knock first. Knock first, Vrix repeated, committing it to memory. Understood. But Pippa hadn't left. She stood in the doorway, her tail twitching with what Danny was learning to recognize as curiosity. Could you Could you teach us? The stretches? Dr. Lilith said, it prevents injuries. We work with heavy machinery. Pulled muscles are common. Danny blinked. You want to learn yoga? If it makes us stronger and more flexible, yes. Is that permitted? Danny looked at Lilith, who grinned. Hey, I'm not stopping you. Might be good for crew cohesion. Plus, I'd love to see a Ketra try tree pose. What's tree pose? Hurl asked. You'll find out, Danny said, a smile tugging at her lips. Okay, tomorrow morning, same time. Bring your own mats if you have them. We'll start with basics, but I'm warning you, it's harder than it looks. We're Ketra, Vrix said proudly, drawing himself up to his full 4-foot height. We're natural predators. How hard can it be? Ushavik's hissing laughter followed the cubs down the corridor. The next morning, Danny's quarters looked like someone had attempted to set up a fitness studio in a broom closet and given up halfway through. She'd pushed her desk against the wall, shoved her chair into the corner, and rolled out her mat in the center of the narrow floor space. The 3 Kietra cubs sat in a row, each on a borrowed mat, thin foam rectangles from the station's recreation locker that had probably been used for everything from emergency bedding to improvised insulation. Vrix sat at attention, tail wrapped neatly around his feet, looking like a student on the first day of school. Hurl kept flexing her, claws in and out, nervous energy radiating from every whisker. Pippa appeared calm, but her ears swiveled constantly, tracking every sound in the corridor outside. Okay, Danny said, standing at the front of her accidental classroom. First rule of yoga, no judgment. Everyone's body is different. Don't compare yourself to others. Just focus on what your body can do today. My body can pounce 6 meters from a standstill. Vrix offered helpfully. Great, but we won't be doing that. Second rule, breathe. Never hold your breath. If you can't breathe in a pose, you've gone too far. What if we're stalking prey? Hurl asked. We hold our breath then. You're not stalking prey. You're stretching. Different activity. Different breathing. Danny sat down cross-legged on her mat. Let's start simple. Sit like this. The Ketra attempted to mirror her position. It went about as well as expected. Their digitigrade legs, built for explosive power and speed, didn't quite fold the same way human legs did. Vrix managed something approximating cross-legged, though his knees stuck up near his ears. Hurl gave up and tucked her legs beneath her, sitting on her haunches. Pippa folded one leg under and extended the other, looking vaguely uncomfortable. Close enough, Danny said diplomatically. Now, close your eyes. 3 sets of reflective eyes remained stubbornly open. Close your eyes, Danny repeated. That's how you get eaten, Vrix said matter-of-factly. Danny pinched the bridge of her nose. Right. Predator species. Pack mentality. Never show vulnerability. Okay, new plan. Keep your eyes open, but soften your gaze. Look at the floor in front of you. Don't focus on anything specific. Just let your vision relax. That worked better. The cubs settled slightly, their breathing slowing. Now, we're going to focus on breathing. Inhale through your nose. Danny demonstrated. Slow and deep. Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then exhale through your mouth. Same count. 4 seconds. They tried. Vrix inhaled so deeply he started coughing. Hurl exhaled so forcefully she fogged up the viewport. Pippa actually managed it correctly, though she looked surprised by her own success. Good, Pippa. Vrix, Hurl, gentler. You're not trying to inflate a balloon or blow out a fire. Just steady, controlled breathing. Let's try again. They cycled through breathing exercises for 5 minutes. By the end, all 3 cubs had found a rhythm, their furry chests rising and falling in unison. Danny felt an unexpected surge of pride. Teaching was harder than she'd expected, but there was something satisfying about watching them learn. All right, let's add movement. We'll start with cat-cow stretch. Get on your hands and knees. The cubs dropped to all fours with predatory grace. Of course they did. This was basically their natural stance. Now, arch your spine up toward the ceiling, like you're a cat that's been startled. Tuck your chin. Pull your belly in. Danny demonstrated, rounding her back. 3 spines curved upward with unsettling flexibility. Ketra vertebrae, it turned out, were even more articulated than human ones. Good. Now reverse it. Let your belly drop. Lift your head and tail. Arch your spine the other way. The cubs flowed into the counterpose with liquid ease. Their spines undulated like waves, and Danny realized with a start that they were better at this than she was. Okay, you're naturals at that one. Let's try something harder. Downward dog. She moved into position, hips high, hands and feet planted, body forming an inverted V. The cubs attempted to follow. Vrix got his rear end up, but forgot to straighten his arms, creating more of an inverted U. Hurl overbalanced and face-planted into her mat with a muffled oof. Pippa managed the shape but started trembling after 3 seconds. It's harder than it looks, isn't it? Danny said, not unkindly. My shoulders are on fire, Pippa gasped. That's normal. Come down and rest. We'll try again in a minute. The door chimed. Danny, still in downward dog, called out, It's open! Dr. Lilith entered, carrying a steaming mug of coffee. Behind her, Kirk, her assistant, a gangly human botanist with perpetually worried eyes, peered into the room. I heard there was a yoga class? Word travels fast, Danny said, coming out of the pose. There's not much room, but you're welcome to join. Oh, I'm just watching. Kirk, though, Lilith gave him a gentle push forward, has been complaining about back pain for weeks. I prescribed stretching. This seems perfect. Kirk looked like he'd rather face an airlock malfunction, but he shuffled into the room, squeezing past Ushvik, who had apparently slithered up silently and was coiled in the doorway. I'm also watching, Ushvik announced, for science. You're here because you think this will be funny, Danny accused. Can't it be both? Kirk unrolled a mat next to Hurl, who eyed him with predatory interest. Are you prey or predator? She asked bluntly. I'm a botanist, Kirk replied, which didn't answer the question but seemed to satisfy Hurl. Okay, back to it, Danny said. Let's try warrior pose. Stand up, everyone. The cubs rose in perfect unison, their movements synchronized. Pack behavior, Danny realized. They moved together instinctively. Step your right foot forward, about 3 feet. Your left foot stays back, turned slightly outward. Bend your right knee, don't let it go past your toes, and raise your arms overhead. Look up. Kirk managed it with minimal wobbling. Vrix got the leg position right, but forgot about his arms. Hurl raised her arms but kept her legs straight. Pippa did everything correctly, but started to tip sideways. Warrior pose is about balance and strength, Danny explained, holding her own pose steady. You're rooted to the ground but reaching toward the sky. Strong foundation, expansive energy. You should feel powerful. I feel like I'm going to fall over, Pippa muttered. That's also normal. Hold for 5 breaths. Remember, controlled breathing. They held, trembled, persevered. When Danny finally said they could release, all 3 cubs collapsed onto their mats, like they'd just fought off an actual enemy. That was combat, Vrix groaned. That was absolutely combat. Against gravity, Danny agreed. Welcome to yoga. Holbrist chose that moment to rumble past in the corridor. He paused, his massive stone head rotating toward the open door. His glowing eyes took in the scene. Humans and Ketra on mats. The serpentine Ushvik watching with obvious amusement. Everyone slightly sweaty and breathing hard. "Still exercising," he observed, his voice like tectonic plates shifting. "Want to join?" Danny offered, knowing full well what the answer would be. "My species achieves peak physical condition by age 3, and maintains it for 600 years through mineral absorption," Holbrist stated. "Exercise is unnecessary, also inefficient, also baffling." He paused. "Carry on." He rumbled away, leaving a trail of fine stone dust. "I like him," Hurl said. "Very straightforward." "He's got a point, though," Kirk wheezed, flat on his back. "This is exhausting." "That means it's working," Lilith said cheerfully from her position against the wall. "Your muscles are learning. Keep going, Danny." Danny glanced at her audience, tired but engaged, skeptical but willing. "All right, let's try something fun. Tree pose." The cubs perked up. "Tree?" Vrix's tail started swishing. "We're good at climbing." "Different kind of tree." Danny stood on her right leg, bent her left knee, and placed her left foot against her right thigh. Her hands came together at her chest. "Balance pose. Stand on one leg. Place the other foot wherever is comfortable. Ankle, calf, thigh, not the knee, and try to stay steady." Kirk tried and immediately toppled. Vrix got his foot up but couldn't find his balance, hopping around like a furry pogo stick. Hurl refused to lift her foot more than an inch off the ground, declaring anything higher was tactically unsound. Pippa, surprisingly, found her balance, one foot pressed against her knee. Ignore that, Danny thought, and her arms stretched overhead. "Pippa's got it," Danny praised. "See? Center yourself. Find a focal point. Breathe." "I'm doing it!" Pippa's voice was triumphant. "I'm a tree." Then her tail twitched, pure feline reflex, and she crashed sideways into Vrix, who tumbled into Hurl, who yelped and grabbed onto Kirk for stability. They went down in a tangle of limbs and fur and startled human cursing. Ushavik's hissing laughter filled the room. "Okay, maybe we need more practice on that one," Danny said, trying not to laugh as the pile of beings sorted themselves out. "Your tail betrayed you," Vrix informed Pippa solemnly. "I know. I can't control it when I'm excited." Pippa's tail was indeed lashing back and forth. "Wait," Danny said slowly. Realization dawning. "You guys have an extra balance point that I don't. Your tails. That's actually an advantage, if you can learn to control them." The cubs looked at their tails like they were seeing them for the first time. "Our tails are for communication and balance in leaps," Hurl said. "Not for tree standing." "But they could be. Think about it. Tightrope walkers on Earth use poles for balance. Your tails are built-in balance poles. You just need to learn to use them intentionally, instead of reflexively." Vrix's eyes widened. "That's actually clever. Can we try again?" "Definitely. But first," Danny checked her chronometer. "We need to finish with something calming. Final pose is called corpse pose." "Corpse?" All three cubs looked alarmed. "Poor translation. It's the relaxation pose. You lie flat on your back, arms at your sides, legs extended, and just rest. Let everything relax. No tension, no effort. Just breathe and be still." The Ketra exchanged uncertain glances. Lying on your back was a vulnerable position. Prey position. Everything in their evolutionary programming screamed against it. "Trust me," Danny said softly, lying down on her own mat. 5 minutes. That's all. Just try." Slowly, reluctantly, the cubs lowered themselves down. Kirk was already flat, grateful for the rest. Even Ushvik uncoiled completely, stretching his serpentine length across the floor near the door. "Close your eyes if you want," Danny murmured. "Or don't. Just relax. Let the floor support you. Notice your breathing. Notice how your body feels. No judgment, just awareness." Silence settled over the room, broken only by breathing and the ever-present hum of the station's life support systems. Danny let her own tension drain away, feeling the familiar peace of Savasana. After a few minutes, she heard it. Soft, rhythmic rumbling. The cubs were purring. Danny kept her eyes closed, listening to the purring. It was a sound she'd never expected to hear in this context, a deep, thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate through the floor itself. The Ketra didn't purr often, she'd learned. It was reserved for moments of deep contentment, safety, and trust. They felt safe here. On her cramped quarters floor, lying vulnerable on their backs, they felt safe enough to purr. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in Danny's chest. She'd come to space to study alien biology, to catalog microorganisms, and write papers that 3 people would read. She hadn't expected to become a yoga instructor for predator cubs. She hadn't expected to feel like she was building something that mattered. "All right," she said quietly after another minute. "Slowly start to wiggle your fingers and toes. No rushing. Take your time coming back." The purring faded as the cubs stirred. Vrix rolled onto his side, then pushed himself up to sitting. Hurl stretched her arms overhead, claws extending, then retracting. Pippa simply lay there for another moment, a small smile on her feline features. Kirk sat up groggily, looking like he'd actually fallen asleep. Ushevik had coiled back into his watching position, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "How do you feel?" Danny asked. "Tired," Vrix admitted. "But good tired? Like after a successful hunt, but without the prey." "My shoulders hurt less," Kirk said, rotating them experimentally. "Actually, that's weird. They hurt less." "That's the point," Lilith said from the doorway. "Stretching increases blood flow, releases tension. You'll feel even better tomorrow if you keep it up." "I want to learn more," Pippa said suddenly, sitting up straight. "The tree pose. I want to master it. And I want to know what else there is." "There are hundreds of poses," Danny said. "Some take years to perfect. But we can work through the basics, if you're serious about this." "We're serious," Vrix said, and Hurl nodded agreement. "This is pack time now, every morning, if you'll teach us." "Pack time," Danny repeated. Vrix's ears flicked, a gesture of mild embarrassment. "On Rick and 4, packs do everything together. Hunt together, eat together, rest together. It builds unity, strength. When you trust your packmates, you fight better, live better. This," he gestured at the mats, the small space, "this feels like pack time. We do something hard together. We help each other improve. That's what pack means." Danny felt that warmth in her chest expand. "I'd be honored to be part of your pack time." "Our pack," Pippa corrected gently. "You're not apart from it. You're in it." Before Danny could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, this is Commander Rothenberg. We're approaching the Virillion debris field for sample collection. Science teams report to labs in 30 minutes. Engineering, I need those collector drones operational. That means you, junior engineers." The cubs scrambled to their feet, suddenly all business. "We're late," Hurl said, rolling up her borrowed mat with quick efficiency. "Again," Vrix added. "Go," Danny said, waving them toward the door. "We'll continue tomorrow, same time." They rushed out in a flurry of fur and enthusiastic goodbyes. Kirk left more slowly, still looking slightly dazed. Ushvik slithered after them, pausing at the threshold. "You've made friends," he observed. "The cubs are young, far from home. They needed this connection, routine, something familiar in unfamiliar space." "I think I needed it too," Danny admitted. "I didn't realize how isolated I'd felt until I wasn't anymore." "Yoga," Ushevik said thoughtfully. "The human practice of controlled discomfort for mental peace. Only your species would invent something so paradoxical. And only your species could make it work." His tongue flicked out once more. "Tomorrow I may join. My coils are not as flexible as they once were." He slithered away before Danny could respond. Lilith lingered, sipping her coffee, which had to be cold by now. "You handled that well. Teaching, I mean. You're good at it." "I have no idea what I'm doing," Danny confessed, rolling up her mat. "None of us do. We're all just figuring it out as we go." Lilith set down her mug. "But you gave those cubs something important. They're the youngest crew members on this station. They're homesick and scared and trying desperately not to show it, because their culture says vulnerability is weakness. You created a space where they could be vulnerable and safe at the same time. I just taught them some stretches. You taught them that strength and vulnerability can coexist. That's bigger than stretches." Lilith picked up her mug again. "Keep doing this. It's good for crew morale. Good for you, too. I'll make it official. Requisition some proper mats. Maybe clear out a corner of the rec room for a dedicated space. You don't have to. I'm the chief medical officer. I'm making it a mental health initiative. Preventative care." Lilith grinned. "Besides, I want to see Hulbris attempt warrior pose. That will never happen." "Let me dream." The next morning, Danny woke to find a package outside her door. Inside were 3 items: a brand-new yoga mat in deep blue, a handwritten note in careful standard that read, "Thank you for teaching us to be strong while resting. Vrix, Hurl, Pippa," and a small carved figure. She picked up the carving, turning it over in her hands. It was made from some kind of dark wood, beautifully crafted, depicting a human in tree pose. The detail was incredible. She could see individual fingers, the curve of the spine, even the expression of calm concentration on the tiny face. They'd made this. Last night, after their shift, they'd carved this for her. Danny set it carefully on her desk, positioning it where she'd see it every day. The morning session went smoother than the first. The cubs arrived on time, already warming up with cat-cow stretches without being told. Kirk showed up with a proper exercise mat and significantly less anxiety. Ushevik made good on his promise, coiling himself in a corner and following along with the breathing exercises. 2 more crew members appeared: Vin, the 4-eyed insectoid navigator, who wanted to improve their core strength for long shifts at the helm, and Dr. Lilith herself, finally participating instead of just watching. Danny's quarters were officially too small. They moved to the rec room, a slightly larger space with better ventilation and room for actual movement. Word spread through the station like wildfire, or as close to wildfire as you could get in a pressurized metal container. By the end of the week, morning yoga had become a fixture of station life. Not everyone came. Hulbris maintained his position that exercise was inefficient, and several crew members worked opposite shifts. But enough showed up that Danny had to establish a rotation system. The cubs, though, never missed a session. They were there every morning, gradually improving, their bodies learning the language of deliberate movement and controlled strength. Vrix finally mastered tree pose, using his tail for balance exactly as Danny had suggested. Hurl discovered she loved warrior sequences, the controlled power appealing to her hunting instincts. Pippa turned out to have a natural talent for balance poses, able to hold positions longer than anyone else, including Danny. And Danny herself changed. The isolation she'd felt, the homesickness that had been a constant background hum, faded. She'd found her place on this station, carved out a role that mattered. She wasn't just the xenobiologist cataloging microorganisms. She was the human who taught other beings how to breathe, how to stretch, how to find stillness in the chaos of space. 3 months after that first morning, Commander Rothenberg stopped by a session. She stood in the doorway, watching as Danny guided a mixed group of species through sun salutations. Ketra, humans, one serpentine, one insectoid, all moving together, breathing together. After class, the commander approached Danny. "I'm adding this to the official schedule. Recreational therapy, 30 minutes every morning shift. You'll receive additional compensation." "That's not necessary." "It absolutely is. Crew cohesion has improved measurably since you started this. Sick calls are down. Productivity is up. Whatever you're doing, it's working." The commander smiled, a rare expression on her usually stern face. "Plus, I tried it myself yesterday. My back hasn't felt this good in years. Keep it up." That evening, Danny sat in her quarters, looking out at Virillion Prime spinning below. The carved figure sat on her desk, catching the purple light from the planet. In a few hours, she'd sleep. Tomorrow morning, she'd wake early, roll out her mat, and teach a room full of aliens how to breathe. She'd come to space searching for something. She wasn't sure what. Purpose, maybe. Discovery. Understanding. She'd found it in the strangest place imaginable. Not in her microscope slides or research papers, but on a yoga mat, surrounded by predator cubs who'd once thought she was fighting invisible enemies.